exactly. I'm like, I feel like I seen this apartment on the TV. 3 o'clock in the morning. $1 million shit in the cut. In the hood. That's where de Blasio was living, man.
No, he was living up further than the trashy brownstones up there. Between 5th and 6th Avenue, 15th or 18th Street, 17, between 15 and 17, one of those blocks. They had the worst looking property on the block. It was just disturbing. He had two spaces, two buildings though. And they both were the worst looking buildings you ever see. So everything is a stage to some degree. Yeah, let's listen to the rest of Matt. It's only like 15 more minutes.
Now, that's how it works. And yes, they knew a long time ago a system that is that perverse, based on absolutely nothing, where bankers can just make money up, is not going to last. Okay, and this is we are in the bottom of the ninth right now. Doesn't mean they're going to close the banks this weekend, but this virus scare is part of ushering in the new system. Now, even with that sort of a sick system, where for every loan, the lending agency makes up the money, creates it out of nothing, and a system where a dollar can't be brought, this is a great example we just went over, can't be brought into the economy without it being attached to a debt of some kind, a mortgage, a loan. Okay, even if that sickness is part of your system, you still can do very well with that. You could still probably, with AI supercomputers and knowing how to massage everything, you probably could make that last 200 years or more. But see, what these controllers on Mount Olympus, everything is always a perversion. Everything is always a sick perversion. We make ridiculous assumptions as to what an economy has to be. Like the stock market just has to exist. We'll talk about that in a second. But let's just assume it has to exist. Well, why should it even exist? It's a cancer. It's a plague, the entire stock market. But even assuming it has to exist, if they would have kept the perversion out of it, then it still may have lasted another 100 years. It was just about buying shares in a company or an interest in a company, and the old days where they would send you a stock certificate and you were supposedly part owner. If they just kept it at that, they could have probably gone another 100 years. But again, there's always a perversion. There's always, let's introduce all of these strange new financial products and collateral debt obligations and bundling up mortgages for products that can be placed on Wall Street, and things like put options and call options and derivatives on steroids, where you don't own anything, but you're making a bet with money you don't even have, a bet on a bet on a bet, and it just starts to compound, and it just starts to get exponentially more and more perverted. You know, a system is completely gone in 2008 when we heard stories that the mortgages, the toxic mortgages, were so bundled up that when people stopped making payments on the home, we heard the stories, and to some degree this was true. Nobody knew who owned what. So who goes after the guy that's not paying? Like, I had a neighbor, and I'll just tell the quick story, and this is when a system gets this, the underlying basis of a system is so rotten. This is the type of things that happen. He was right back in the day. This guy was something happened to him. He was absolutely out of his mind. He was on some sort of a pension. His wife was a nice person, his kid, but they constantly apologized for him. I knew a contractor that went in to see this guy to do something in his house, and he had to be knighted. The guy said, if you want to work in my house, bow down. I have to knight you to come on premises. I mean, completely out of his mind, and he wasn't a very nice guy either. I had to put up with that nightmare for 3 years. But this is the days of nobody had to prove any credit worthiness, just signed, got the mortgage, moved in next to me, brought in his vicious mastiffs, started to destroy the property, and he also just went right out a few weeks later, brand new Ford F-250 truck, And then whatever money he got, his mother died, got a little bit of inheritance. He put the chrome on it. He put the spinners on it. I mean, just an absolute nightmare. Now, then, of course, everything starts to go bad. He's just too dumb to maintain. He has no finances. He just bought everything on credit. And then he stops making his payments. Well, who could have predicted that? Well, I guess Ford, or the Ford people, were a little bit, they were onto him first, because I guess they know where their cars are. And he says to me at one point, he says, yeah, I had to get rid of that truck, they were onto me or whatever. He says, I stripped that truck down for everything I could, and then I left it somewhere. And then he kind of realized, he said, oh, maybe I shouldn't have told him that. I was like, I don't, just like yelling across the fence, not like I was his confidant, somebody that had to be knighted to go into his house. But yeah, I left that truck here and I stripped it down for everything it was worth. Like, that's really great, Ford, and everybody that gave away these cars with no real credit worthiness of the people buying them. These are smart business practices that are part of a society and an economy that lasts. So, same thing with the house, but it's possible, because he was there for, I don't know, it seemed like he was there for 7, 8, 9 months after he stopped making all payments. I'm sure he didn't make a tax payment. I'm sure he didn't make a mortgage payment. He would come over here and he borrow $10 at a time. I'd give him $10. He actually came over to borrow water once. I mean, in a way, I felt bad for his wife and his kid. I really did. It wasn't dire straits. He had other relatives he could go to. We weren't starving over there or anything, but it was a bad situation. But I'm more indicting an economic system that will just give this guy in total $350,000 of loans when he has no ability to pay it. So, they didn't even know, probably, how do we, the mortgage, who really owns the house, it took months to get him out of there. So this is the situation that we're still dealing with today, because they didn't fix anything in 2008. All they did was patch it with more perversion, bring in more perversion, more stimulus, more money injections, more nonsense. And it is absolutely time to pay the piper. You just can't go on with something where the absolute root of it, the basis of it, is that sick. Those people have been convinced that the stock market is just the backbone of American capitalism, and good capitalism around the world centers around a stock market. The stock market that exists in its current form is such a absolute perversion and bastardization of anything good anybody could say about capitalism. It should not have ever been allowed to exist, what we have today. It is so inherently dangerous, it's not even funny. So you convince a group of people around the world to put their collectively trillions into the stock market. And do you realize how quickly that wealth can be wiped out if anything, quote, major happens? And I mean wiped out. Not that if a market falls 10,000 points, it's not that somebody got just as rich on the other side. No, it's a destruction of wealth. The price on a share will fall and continue to fall if there's nobody bidding on the other side. Nobody wants it on the other side. It will fall down to a level to where somebody wants it, to where somebody will buy that stinking shell game. Somebody will be interested in buying that turd if it falls 90%. It's not like as it falls, somebody's getting just as rich somewhere else and is taking the wealth off somewhere else. No, it's a complete destruction of wealth. Do you see how dangerous this is? So you see how it's falling like crazy now. And what do we have now? We have in the state of Montana or Nevada, we have 5 or 7, 10 deaths. We have a nasty flu, and the stock market's being wiped out by a third. What if something really major happened? I mean, that makes this look like a walk in the park. See, all those trillions, the stock market starts falling. No one's going to step in and buy on the other side. No. Not real. of course. I know that these stock markets have basically become just zeros and ones, all injections of made-up money from the Fed. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm just saying of how it is supposed to work. So if something major happens, well, who's going to even want to own a stock? So theoretically, in one day, the price can fall 95%. That's a destruction of wealth. Instead of people taking that wealth and saying, I'm going to build a barn behind my house and put the money into something real, or even hold some gold, or buy an antique rifle collection, hold real things that preserves wealth. A whole society's been set up to go into the stock market that theoretically, I know they inject money. I know the Fed injects trillions. I know it's a big game. I know it's not real supply against real demand. But if it were, stocks could drop 95% in one day if something major happened, because no one's going to step in and buy a stock. If 3 cities around the world blow up or whatever happens. See, but the point is, why it's so dangerous is it's not all that wealth just went off to somewhere else. It's a destruction of wealth, a loss of everything overnight. It's just gone. Everything everything they've worked for, everything they've done in their career, and they're relying on the stock market. Are you kidding me? And it's incredible, masterful brainwashing. I mean, the commercials, and for those of you that aren't old enough, I mean, in the 90s is when it was laid down. It was all of these professionals, financial advisors popped up in the 90s with the mutual funds, and we heard about the Vanguard Index 500 fund and how well it does and how mega it is, and the Fidelity Magellan Fund, and everybody made their 12 to 15% a year, sometimes even 18% during the dot-com boom, and it was such a sound investment, and everybody was singing the same canary song, canary in a coal mine, then okay, it's already perverted. At that level, it's already perverted because you're owning shares in a company. Well, I own part of this company, that company through my Magellan Fund. You don't own jack shit. Try to drive on the lot. Try to drive up and say you own stock. Show them your shares through the Vanguard funds and see if the security guard lets you on the lot. But you're part owner. Wouldn't you have access to go on their grounds? You see, you don't own shit. You're just trading against a greater fool theory. You're just saying, I attach myself to Apple at 120, and I'm going to bet a bigger fool will come along and want to buy what I attach myself to at 121. And if they do, I'll sell this junk, this fake stuff that I don't own crap, to the greater fool, and I'll continue to play this greater fool game. If any president or politician was really working on the side of the people and not for the tiny little group represented by what's on the back of the dollar bill, go pull it out and take a look at it sometime, a close look at it. What do you think all that creepy stuff is for? What do you think that really represents? Whose interests that really represents? If any politician was real, president or senator, they would have held press conference after press conference back in the early 90s when things started to get out of control, saying, people, this is inherently dangerous to put your entire life's savings wealth into a stock market because it can be wiped out very, very quickly. They would have pushed people out. They say, hey, you want to think of it as gambling, they would have said through their public service announcements, through their ad council public service account announcements. But what do they instead? They send the guy walking around with the pig head, feed the pig, feed the pig. The ad council would have said, you want to gamble over here, fine, but don't put your life savings into a greater fool system, a system that only works if a bigger fool comes along and buys your junk. They would have pushed people out of it. Said, make sure it's less than 10% of everything you own if you want to gamble in it. And if you're going to gamble in it, know you could lose it all overnight. How many times have you heard a politician say that at any level? Never. See, it's never. So one of two things, or actually both things are going on. It's not one of two things. Either the politicians at the lower levels are just absolute morons that just know how to say the same thing over and over again and what they think what voters want to hear without understanding any of it themselves, But the politicians at the higher levels, you call me a conspiracy theorist, it is sinister. They know exactly what's going on. They know how dangerous the stock market is. But, they might not be able to purchase the 400-foot yacht if they convince you to get out of it. They need you embracing their derivatives and embracing their sick financial instruments. They need you breathing life into it and putting your money into it. So they'll never explain to you what it really is. They give themselves away if anybody would care to pay attention. But most people down your block just think this is the stock market and all its derivatives. That's the heart of what capitalism is and what it was meant to be. And it would still be working perfectly, you conspiracy theorist ass, if it wasn't for this virus. Nobody could have predicted the virus. See, it all was beautiful. It was a beautiful system until a virus came along. Well, that's kind of the point. Anything could come along at any time. You shouldn't have been in the stock market, especially if you're over age 40. Now, as I said that, I realize there's a lot of people listening to this that own stock. I'm not a financial advisor. I have no license to give financial advice. I'm not giving it in this. But if I'm saying I better bring this, out now, so people don't, take that the wrong way. When I'm going to talk about how the system is completely fake. Again, it's just the Fed injecting trillions. So if they're not quite ready to go to the new economic system, they could reinflate it to a degree. They can make up any amount of money they want on their computer. So it could be, the market could be reinflated. But I assure you, if it's reinflated, it's just because somebody's sitting at a Fed computer typing in, 5,000,000,000,000,000. That's 5 trillion a day, and injecting it equally into every big stock, into every big mutual fund. They can inject 5 trillion a day and inflate it. They can inflate the Dow up to 40 or 50,000. It's that fake. But see, the hyperinflation in certain parts of the economy has already started. So if they're already injecting a ridiculous amount of money, but if they just go super ridiculous, again, if you have a keyboard that's attached to Fed printing or making up of money, you can go, 9 zeros for billion, 12 zeros for trillion, go 15 or 16 zeros. I mean, but when that happens, fine, they'll reinflate the stock market if they decide to do this. I don't know what they're going to do. If anything was real and it was just supply and demand, the Dow would go down to 2,000 or 3,000. It would go to nothing just based on this. But they might reinflate it with their funny money one more time. So I'm not telling anybody what to do or not to do here. I'm out of the sick system because I don't want my energy attached to it. I'm out to preserve my humanity. Being in the stock market takes one's humanity. I'm not going to participate in their sick systems. So that's a personal choice, not about making or losing money. They could inflate it up using more funny business. But I'll tell you what, if that much money is injected into the system, into the worldwide economy, then there will be no stopping the hyperinflation on basics, on necessities, on toilet paper, on the price of a bag of apples will go to $20, $30 very quickly. The price of a Ford F-150 will go to $150,000. It won't be stopped. And then at that point, nobody can afford that, whoever's giving this presentation. Well, yeah, I know that. At that point, they will have to just simply wipe everything clean and say, okay, this here is the new world currency, and this is how it's going to work, and reset and do that. I'm not saying when the one world currency might not come next week. They might try to inflate it up one last time. I don't know. I wouldn't be in it, but who knows what they're capable of? They don't have a limit on the number of zeros they can type out before they inject. So, but again, at that point, cotton swabs will be $27. So, and at that point, nobody can afford anything, and every senior, begins to starve, and the new system will then have to be pretty quickly implemented, and it will be accepted, and they know exactly how to do it. They've modeled it hundreds and hundreds of times, not just through Bernanke, monsters like Ben Bernanke, but through Greenspan. They know exactly how to introduce it. And it'll be painful. And it'll be a whole new paradigm, a reset of what is considered who has wealth and who doesn't, probably designed to put wealth into even a smaller and smaller amount of hands. But people will gladly accept it, and it'll work. You'll be able to use it to buy apples and to buy cotton swabs. It'll work. They've modeled it out, and they likely know exactly what they're doing. The purpose of this video is just the economic side. It was not the social or human side or dehumanization side or spiritual side of what they on Mount Olympus are trying to do to us. That is far too big of a topic and far too conspiratorial for this presentation. And because this could be passed to others, I kept it limited basically to pure economics. And I hope I've gotten people to want to break out of the economic, not limit themselves to say what's happening now is purely about economics, but it's about other things. And that's really what's important. And let's talk about that some other time.
Good job, Matt. Even though I am deep in the stock market right now, but I did not put our whole life savings. No, I did not. So, Matt is a good guy if you want to listen to someone who's kind of out there with his ideas, who's not reading from a script, and who challenges you to think bigger at all times about our reality and about the players in this reality. This is why we, not just I don't believe it's just I. That's why we like Matt. Do you like Matt?
I do like Matt. I do like Matt. He gives you a different perspective, you know?
Yeah. A totally different perspective on our reality. Because like Elon Musk even said, it's more realistic, or it's more it makes more sense that we are living in some sort of fluid reality, one in which we're, we don't know exactly what's going on. Like in other words, is any of this even real? Could we be in some sort of simulation? Like this simulation. And if we are in a simulation, these things that are happening now is all part of, this simulation. This is, they're not going to allow reality to just sit back and drink your Mai Tais and have yourself a good life. No, they're not going to do that. That's over. They are going to bring chaos and stress. I speak on this all the time, how we are possibly living in this reality unaware of other life forms that are right next to us, that are possibly feeding on us for sustenance and in order to survive, in order to live. And some of these creatures possibly work best on fear and stress. These creatures that are out there that, and I refer to it as pressing the buttons and pulling the levers. And that's something that I've heard recently from a new guy that I've been listening to. I can't remember his name at the moment. And he spoke on the pushing of the levers and the pulling of the switches and all that kind of stuff. That is, there are like there's just some sort of proverbial room. And I've always, talked about that a lot, This room, what is this room? What are there levers and switches being pulled? So, yeah. I don't know. I think we'll go down Times Square and call it a day.
Okay.
All right. Thank you for watching.
Sounds good. I'm just getting tired.
Yeah, man.
You tired, Daddy?
A little bit. Mind you, it's only 9 o'clock in the evening. This is 9 o'clock. What's today? A Wednesday or Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday, 9 o'clock. Let's turn down Times Square.
New York City.
New York City. Let me let this pedestrian cross. Got his gloves on. They didn't tell him that these masks don't really work with beards. They forgot to tell him that. Dr. Oz said the masks don't work with beards.
Wow. Beards.
Yeah, the beard is not. It'd be best to shave.
Ooh.
9 o'clock on a Thursday. New York City. Yeah. He's waking the city up with that right there. I love it.
Yes. So nice.
I love it. Got his motorcycle boots on. I see you, buddy. I see you.
Just chilling.
Those are some boots there, boy. Watch out there, boy.
Good times, like more casual.
I say it's a black man. What do you say? The boots are too cool. All that downshifting. I like the way you're waking up the city. Good job, brother. You sound great. Be well. Yeah, white man. In his 60s. All day. I love it. He's not young.
Got a problem or it's supposed to be like
Liquor stores are still open.
yeah, it's essential business.
Essential, right? Oh my God.
That's
The
essential.
liquor stores, I love it. They are open. Good time to be a liquor store. Bike repair shop, bicycle shop, liquor store, supermarket, laundromat. Oh yeah, he's out. That thing sounds beautiful. Look at the Intrepid, where they put on display the many ways to kill someone. Good job. Good job, America. Nine o'clock on a Thursday.
10:15.
Look at the hustler spot. What are all these whores gonna do? Yeah, they'll be all right. They'll be fine.